Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Moving on to our breaking news of the day, we were able to hear that a major Ukrainian drone attack has occurred near the city of Ryazan, targeting Russian air bases and also other vital Russian military equipment in the area. We were able to get multiple pictures and video evidence confirming that there have been explosions at the airbase, and not only that, showing some drone activity as well. These first two pictures show the explosion's aftermath, with a plume of smoke rising into the sky in the distance near to the eastern area of Ryazan, and as we move on in the clips, we can actually see what the explosion looked like on security camera footage. Here's the clip. See it right over there in that picture. We can also hear the sound of the explosion as well. And moving on from that and into our next video, we also got to see the Ukrainian drone flying over, or at least one of them, that ended up hitting the airfield at Ryazan. That's the end of that clip, but once again showing that there was a fairly considerable sized drone attack that was occurring on Ryazan today. We were able to hear that apparently a Tu-22M3 has most likely been damaged or destroyed at the airfield at Alenia, and I'll be really quickly trying to show y'all this airfield near Ryazan. If we go to the city and we look right up here, this is the exact airfield that we were talking about. We can actually see some Tu-22M3 bombers like this one right here stationed at the airfield that are operating from it. This is a strategic bomber wing of the Russian Air Force that is used to launch cruise missiles and ballistic missiles into the territory of Ukraine. From what we understand, this attack was either trying to destroy the facilities at this airbase, or they were attempting to knock out aircraft. We're not exactly sure. Usually the Ukrainians prefer to try and knock out airfield facilities instead of the actual aircraft, because trying to hit an aircraft at this kind of a distance is incredibly difficult. While the drones are very accurate, it's impossible to really know exactly what areas of the tarmac these bombers will be at when the drones arrive. And so it's much easier to hit the static logistics facilities at the airbase that would make sure that these aircraft can't even fly because they can't be repaired, they can't be refueled, they can't be rearmed, so then the bombers are practically useless unless they're moved to another airfield. So going off of that, it does appear that the Ukrainians are once again trying to fight the Russian missile and drone campaign where it starts at the air bases of the Russian Federation, and it looks as though, according to initial reports, there may have been some considerable damage caused. One other thing that really is interesting, though, and it's going against the grain of the normal Ukrainian attacks, is that this one apparently may have ended up hitting a Tu-22M3. Just a moment ago, I was talking about how usually the Ukrainians go for logistics facilities at these airfields, trying to make sure that it's a lot more difficult to keep these bomber wings flying. But what's very interesting is that they said today, apparently a Tu-22M3 was hit by a drone, suggesting that it may have actually been the target of the attack, and instead of Ukraine going for its normal route of destroying the logistics facilities, they are now going for the route of destroying the aircraft themselves, completely stopping an air operation from happening because the bombers that would conduct it aren't even around to be used. But nevertheless, once again showing a major attack by Ukraine, and hopefully we will get more positive and good news about this attack as time goes by. At the moment, all we can confirm is that the airbase has been hit. One Tu-22M3 may be damaged. Anything beyond that, we can't really confirm at the moment. However, down in Volgograd, we are able to confirm that an Su-34 crashed near to the city. The Su-34 is a fighter bomber that has been used very heavily so far in the war. You can actually see it pictured here. The Su-34 is based off of an Su-27, with an incredibly enlarged cockpit allowing for a pilot and co-pilot, and also additional hard points for pylons. We can also see here a drop tank, which is fairly rare for most Su-27 models. The Su-34 is one of them that can. And also, the Su-34 has reinforced landing gear to deal with the heavier loads that this aircraft would be carrying, and also the heavier weight of the aircraft in general. From what we understand, one of these Su-34s crashed near the area of Volgograd. This is a fairly decent occurrence at this point, actually, crazily enough, for these kinds of aircraft to end up having crashes inside the Russian Federation. We believe that there are several reasons why these crashes may occur. It may be due to low pilot training, which is a very high likelihood considering that the Russian Air Force is constantly having to introduce a new wave of pilots, especially for the Su-34s and Su-25s, that may not have a great deal of training, and so they may be creating incidents where they get themselves into crashes and get killed. There's another chance that it could be that they do not have enough high-end aviation parts to be able to maintain these aircraft and keep them operational where they don't run into critical errors or failures while in flight. That is something that may have happened. We have been hearing within the Russian civil aviation world that there have been a large amount of aircraft failures recently due to a complete lack of any kind of viable or usable aviation parts replacing ones that are getting worn out and broken down. This may be another cause for the crash, but we're not entirely sure about the reason for the crash yet. All we know is that the Su-34 did end up crashing, and we also were told that the pilots may have not escaped the aircraft. But we actually did get a video from the crash site in the area of Volgograd, and here's the clip showing what remains of this Su-34 after the crash. That is video confirmation that this Su-34 did in fact crash, and once again showing us that the Russian aviation is running into some incredibly difficult times. While some sanctions have been circumvented, usually on consumer goods, which many people have heard about and seen for quite some time, the Russian Federation has not really been able to easily circumvent the sanctions as far as aviation parts go for their aircraft. The Russian Federation, while having a industrial base at all, doesn't really have a refined industrial base that is able to produce in large quantities refined aviation parts and components to be able to keep their aircraft in the air. We can see that a lot with the civilian aircraft, and every once in a while like this one, possibly with a military aircraft like the Su-34. Going off of that, it does seem as though the Russians are running out of spare parts in every single category, in every single metric, and they're probably going to be having a very, very rough time trying to figure out how to keep their Air Force flying in the future if they can't find enough refined components and parts to be able to repair these aircraft and keep them airworthy. Meanwhile, in Moscow, we got to see that a deputy head apparently had a visit from the IRA, because it looks as though the deputy head of the satellite communications of the Russian Federation was messing around with his car. Of course, this is not a graphic video, by the way, just wanted to make sure to make that quite clear, because the video actually cuts, but we could see him messing around in the back of his car, and then after he left, the car exploded. Very interesting to see, and it looks as though Ukrainian partisans or pro-Ukrainian partisans are starting to take it upon themselves to try and make sure to send a message to the Russian Federation's armed forces, like this one right here. And we can see them. We can see a whole bunch of people coming up after the fact and looking at the car and seeing that it was blown up quite significantly, and it looks as though Ukrainian partisans are really getting anywhere and everywhere and getting to do anything and everything they would want to do. Meanwhile, in the area of North Korea, we also got to hear something that was incredibly interesting today, and there's a lot that can be hypothesized about this. We don't have an exact answer about why this happened yet, but this is still very interesting. A small earthquake was registered very close to a nuclear test site inside of northeastern North Korea. According to the information that we have, it was a 2.9 magnitude earthquake that was registered in North Korea just moments ago before I began to record this video, and it was right next to the Pyongyang nuclear test site. Now, this is something incredibly interesting because earthquakes can happen, although North Korea isn't really an area that is known to have an incredibly large amount of earthquakes. One thing that I would like to point out, though, is considering its proximity to a nuclear test site, there are a couple of things that we could hypothesize about logically and say that these are some of the things that may have happened. Although I will make sure to put out the strongest caveat I can. While I'm going to go into hypotheticals here, this isn't actually what happened. I know someone in the comment section is going to be saying that I'm trying to say this is what happened. I'm just putting out the ideas of what may have ended up happening near the Pyongyang nuclear test site. One, there could have been a nuclear accident where they were setting up a nuclear weapon for testing and it ended up exploding, creating a 2.9 on the Richter scale. There is another chance that they were conducting a nuclear test today and they blew up a nuclear bomb at the Pyongyang nuclear test site, which ended up registering on the Richter scale. There is really only one of the two that we get hypothesized about. nuclear explosions do create small magnitudes on the Richter scale. That has been confirmed before, and that's usually how many people knew that other countries were testing nuclear weapons, was looking for any kind of low level or of seismic events on the Richter scale. So we have a fairly good idea. This may actually be some sort of a nuclear test that has happened inside of North Korea. That wouldn't be the first time anything like this has happened, but it still would be very concerning if it is, because it's showing that once again, the North Koreans are apparently testing something, possibly suggesting that they have something new that they're trying to test out and see if it's actually effective or usable in a bigger strategic picture. But still, it is interesting, and we don't really know a lot about the earthquake. We know that one happened near to a nuclear test site. We don't know if that is related to a nuclear weapon or not, but still very interesting to hear, and we will try and get more news on that if we can over the next few days and weeks if it comes out. We don't know if it will come out because it's North Korea, and they usually don't say a lot about what's happening inside of North Korea. But with that, that is all of the breaking news that we have for today. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to subscribe, and also support us on Patreon if you would like. The link is in the description below. I got to give a huge shout out to the folks who support us on Patreon, because y'all help to make these videos possible. If it wasn't for the folks who were supporting us on Patreon, we wouldn't be able to work tirelessly almost every day when there's enough news to be able to get on this video and record it, to be able to put out the news for everyone who's going to be watching. And so a huge shout out to those people who go and support us on Patreon, because you're making these video projects possible for everyone on YouTube to watch. And so thank you to y'all once again, and thank you to everyone else who was watching. And with that, we will see you all in the next one.